So we got a 2003 Grand Cherokee here. This one was towed in with a crank no start, and it has a dead gauge cluster. So typically in these sorts of situations, you get sometimes you'll get a no bus message on the cluster, sometimes you won't. So kind of wanted to talk about the process that I go through here with these and how I figure them out. So first thing that I usually do is go into the wiring diagrams and figure out what communication bus the vehicle has. And so I don't know if we're gonna be able to see this, but so this is the wiring diagram for it, and we have the link connector. Shows we got some powers and some grounds here. We got some flash enables and SCI transmits and stuff here for the PCM and the TCM. So this one here, pin 2, is what connects to the rest of the PCI bus. Now basically what that is, it's a single wire data link, serial link. It's a little bit more smarter than CCD, but essentially what it does is it connects all of the modules together so they can all share data like fuel level, compass, temperature, turn signals. It's actually what makes it to where when you push the switch over here, your door over there works. It's actually not a connected wire. It's actually a bus message between the module over here, the module here, and the BCM. So if there's some sort of a lockout because of a security issue, it won't let this stuff work. So the bus is essentially sort of like a network, how a computer connects to another computer. So basically what I do here is first I go into the scan tool, and if you don't have one of these, you're sort of SOL. You're gonna have to use an oscilloscope to graph the voltage here. You're not gonna be able to see this with a multimeter because, as you can see, there's a lot going on there. Now these are actually the bus messages coming across the network, is compass, fuel level, coolant temp, everything that the cluster sees is coming through on these data messages. So typically go to the diagram, figure out what pin we're communicating on, figure out what bus network we have. CCD is going to be different, PCI is going to be different, SCI, transmit and receive, that's how the flashes are done. So you can actually put new Voodoo in the box with that. So this is different than CAN bus. This is different than, they're all a little bit different. So go in here, see if we have activity. Now there's two different ways we can go. If we have activity, then we can go in normally, like we normally would, and scan the vehicle to see if we have communication with any of the modules. All right, so in these scenarios, there's two different directions we can go depending on if the bus is actually active or not. And we can tell that by looking at the oscilloscope. If there's activity, we do this way. If there's no activity, we'll talk about that in a second. So these systems work on what they call the screw your buddy system. Basically what that means is if all of these modules are connected together on the bus and one of them's not on, the rest of them are going to throw their buddy under the bus, and they're going to say, dude, this guy's not here. So I've already gone through here and fixed this one. I know what the problem is, but I kind of wanted to show here. So the PCM was not communicating on the bus, either was the TCM. So these, we're going to completely ignore those. So if you look here, PCM message not received, no cluster message, VIN failure. So you want to look for stuff like this: serial link, external failure. Whoops. No. No bus message. So you want to look for messages like that. Now what I do after that is we can say, okay, so the PCM's not communicating. So what I'll do is I'll get my wiring diagram and I will go through and find all of these modules and I'll check them off one by one to make sure that they're communicating. Now what you can do with that is see if all of these modules are communicating. You can assume that this part of the bus is working. If all of these down here are communicating, you can assume that this part of the bus is working. So with that being said, if we look at our diagram here, we have our door modules, power amp, CD, We have our PCM and our TCM. They're all connected together here at this splice. So passenger door module is on the bus, but these two are not on the bus. So we can assume that everything from here on is functioning, and there's going to be something wrong with this side over here. Not sure why my camera won't focus on this, but I don't think it really matters. The point is the same. So at this point, we can assume that the bus is working. Everything from here back functions. There's something either wrong with this part of the bus, or there's something wrong with the modules. So if we look a little bit closer here, we can see that, well, we can see that there is a splice here, some wires, and there's a connector. Now this connector is C106. It lives down there in that kick panel down there. A lot of times what you'll see is water will come down through the sunroof and drain down there and corrode that out. So from here, what I do is I go back into my resources, whether that's All Data or Tech Connect, or whatever you have, and I will go through and I'll print out all of the connectors for whichever modules are dead. So first thing I do is powers, grounds, bus. That's the first thing you do. Don't worry about anything else. Nothing else matters. Power, ground, and then on your other connector, what size is that? Pin 30. This pin right here, that's our bus. So what I do is unplug the connectors, and read continuity between this and another known good module. Now the cluster right here is actually really easy to get to. A couple screws, you pop that out. What I'll do is run my meter in continuity between here and this pin, just to make sure that there's continuity there. You don't want to worry about voltages at this point. It doesn't matter. So if you have continuity there, you can assume that your bus to here is good. Next thing you do is powers and grounds. So in this particular situation, we had good grounds, good constant power, but we had no switched power. So, digging into this a little bit more, basically found, this is our power distribution, one of three. So if we look in here, the PCM, TCM powertrain control module and the transmission control module, well, basically the same thing. ASD and the fuel pump all receive power from this one circuit. So come inside down here to the fuse box. I got power here, I got power on here. Both sides of the fuse have power. Run continuity between this point here and the PCM. I got no continuity. So now we know that the problem here is a power circuit issue, and it's not necessarily a bus problem. But that's how you can use this process to point you in the right direction to isolate a module. Now, that's if your bus module, if your bus is communicating. If you go in there and there's no communication and all the modules are dead, the process is a little bit more involved. You need to go back to this diagram here. A lot of times you can get a build configuration sheet and kind of figure out how the car was built, figure out what modules it has. And unfortunately, you have to go through here and find these modules and unplug every single one of them until you get them all unplugged, and then you plug them in one by one to figure out which module is bad. Now, the other thing you need to do when you have them all unplugged is verify there's no continuity to ground, verify there's no power on it, verify there's no continuity to power, and make sure it's not shorted to anything else. But if all of that's good, typically what happens is one of these modules goes bad, whether it's the radio or the cluster or something, it'll pull the bus voltage down. So unplugging them will let the rest of the modules communicate. So it's a little bit of an in-depth process. It's a little bit more complicated than what I've talked about here, but it's just sort of is what it is. And I have the Chrysler DRB scan tool, which I can do the same thing as this, but this is where a little bit of experience and having some good quality tools come in, because you're not going to be able to do this just with a voltmeter. You need an oscilloscope at the very minimum. So Hope this helps. You know, just kind of rambling on for 10 minutes, but it is what it is.